A deep, drawn-out growl echoed through the still night. Laura Parker woke with a start, her heart pounding. The sound was not a normal bark, it was urgent, full of warning. She jumped up, realizing the sound was coming from her 6-year-old son, Ethan, in his bedroom. When Laura opened the door, she found Max, her retired K9, standing stiff as a statue at the end of the bed, his fur bristling, his eyes fixed on the dresser. His body was as tense as a bowstring, his ears pressed together, a growl rumbling from his chest like an invisible threat. Ethan was still fast asleep, breathing evenly, completely unaware of what had Max so alert. Max was an accomplished search and rescue team member. Over the years, he saved people from collapsed buildings, tracked fugitives, and stopped dangerous situations before they happened. After retiring, he became a part of the Parker family, especially attached to Ethan. But tonight, the old warrior's instincts were awakened. Max was more than a pet, he was a protector, and the thing lurking in the darkness he seemed to know was far from harmless. At first, Laura tried to calm herself. Maybe Max had just heard the wind or a stray cat outside, but then it happened again. Every night around midnight, Max would get up from his bedwalk slowly to the foot of Ethan's bed and stand there, eyes fixed on the closet door. His growls started out low and steady, but each night they grew more intense. One night, Max even stepped up to the closet, blocking Ethan's view. His back arched, his neck hair standing on end, his eyes glowing in the dim light of the nightlight. Laura's husband, John Parker, also began to take notice. He was a practical man who didn't believe in the unexplainable, but Max's attitude made him uneasy. He would never react like that without a reason. John said, his eyes fixed on the guard dog. Ethan also noticed the change in Max. One night he whispered to his mother, "I don't think Max likes the closet. Every night he stares at it and growls." Laura shivered at his innocent remark. The couple began to pay closer attention. Whenever Max was nervous, they checked the windows, the doors, the backyard, all locked silent. But Max's eyes always returned to the same place, the closet at the end of the room. Little did they know that inside, hidden behind the neatly hung layers of clothes, there was something waiting to be discovered. That night, the wind howled outside, and the rain pounded against the windows. Laura and John had grown accustomed to Max standing guard in Ethan's room every night. But this time, things were different. Max's growl came earlier than usual, deep and warning. Laura woke with a start, her heart pounding. She heard Max's hooves tapping rapidly on the wooden floor, then a loud, sharp bark that tore through the night. John jumped up and rushed to his son's room. When he pushed the door open, the sight before him made his blood run cold. Max was standing in front of the closet, his whole body tense, his fur standing on end, his teeth bared. Ethan sat on the bed, clutching his teddy bear, his eyes bewildered. "What's wrong?" Laura ran in, panicked. John went to open the door, but Max suddenly growled even louder, then pressed his nose against the crack of the door, scratching the floor. A strong, unpleasant smell was coming from inside. The couple glanced at each other, a chill running down their spines. "There must be something inside," John said, his hand gripping the doorknob. As the door swung open, light from the hallway flooded in, illuminating the neatly hung clothes. But in the deepest corner behind the layers of fabric, a deep darkness appeared. Laura held her breath. Max began to screech, his roar echoing in the small space, as if confronting an invisible intruder. That dark area was clearly not a normal part of the room, and they were about to find out why Max was so wary. John bent down, using the flashlight on his phone to shine into the darkness. The light swept over a few old boxes, then stopped at a hole in the wall, just big enough for a person to crawl through. Laura covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God, since when?" Max took a step forward, his nose almost touching the hole, growling fiercely. The roar echoed, bouncing off the solid wall, as if reminding them that danger was still right ahead. John knelt down and peered deeper inside. His heart was pounding. In the dim light, he saw a rolled-up sleeping bag, a few scattered fast food wrappers, a half-empty water bottle, and a rusty knife lying against the edge of the wall. A shiver ran down his spine. Someone had been living here right behind their son's bedroom wall. "John, we have to call the police right away," Laura said shakily, holding Ethan tightly to her chest. But before he could dial, a faint sound came from the dark recess, a rustling sound, as if someone was shifting. Max suddenly bared his teeth, barked fiercely, and rushed forward, leaning hard against the wall. The sounds inside became chaotic, and then suddenly, click, a hidden wooden panel opened, revealing a figure rushing out. He was thin, his clothes were ragged, his eyes were wild. In his hand gleamed the steel of another knife. Laura screamed, backing away and hugging Ethan. John stepped in front, but Max was faster. The dog lunged, knocking the intruder to the floor, teeth clenched, a roar echoing through the room. And that was just the beginning of a nightmare this family never imagined. The sound of running footsteps echoed in the hallway as the red and blue lights of a police car hit the window. Seconds later, 2 officers rushed into the room, weapons ready. Max still had the intruder pinned to the floor, his teeth digging into his arms, his eyes flashing with fierce alertness. An officer quickly subdued him, wrenched the knife from his hand, and handcuffed him. "We've been following this guy for a while," an officer said, his voice heavy. "He's broken into a lot of houses, but he's never been caught. Until tonight." Laura was still shaking, holding Ethan tightly, feeling his son's heart pounding in his chest. John looked at Max. The dog had relaxed now, but was still standing between Ethan and the intruder, breathing heavily, but his eyes never leaving his target. As the police led him away, an officer leaned down and patted Max's head. If it weren't for him, things could have been very different tonight. In the bedroom, the yellow light was warm again, but no one in the family could forget the horror of that moment. Laura knelt down and hugged Max tightly, tears falling onto his thick fur. "You saved us, Max." "And Ethan?" She choked. Max just gently rubbed his head against her shoulder, silent as a reply that protecting his family was something he was always willing to do. The Bennett home was quieter after that night, but the memory of the incident lingered in every look and breath. Ethan slept soundly, no longer waking up in the middle of the night. John and Laura were more grateful than ever to have Max by their side. A few days later, a small ceremony was held at the local police headquarters. The chief of police personally presented Max with a Medal of Honor for bravery. There was thunderous applause, but Max stood still, his eyes fixed on Ethan, as if to affirm that the boy was the most important mission of his life. Back home, Max was in his usual spot, right next to Ethan's bed. Laura gently stroked his head, whispering, "You're more than a dog. You're family." Outside the window, the night wind blew gently and there was no strange sound. But Max kept one eye open, alert, as if ready to stand up at any moment. Because for Max, protecting his family isn't a momentary act of heroism, it's a lifelong oath. The story of Max and the Bennetts reminds us that the loyalty and protective instincts of animals are not to be taken for granted. Sometimes seemingly insignificant signals, a look, a growl, are important warnings. In life, we often ignore intuition, both human and animal, until it's too late. The lesson here is to listen to and trust the signals from the people and animals who love us, because they can see things we don't. Moreover, the bond and love of family, whether between humans or pets, can be incredibly protective and healing, sometimes even saving our lives.